So, war, treaty, purchase, that's how we got all of these lands which we owned in common. Remember that I was saying that we got this in 1848 at the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. One of the things people talk about is we want our lands back. What was this country when the Mormon pioneers came into the Salt Lake Valley? It was Mexico. I guess we were immigrants into Mexico at the time. Kind of interesting thought. The state got right at 7.5 million acres at statehood. This was given to them out of that cache of federal lands that we all own. The state was carved out of those federal lands meaning lands we own in common. They have sold over 4 million of those acres since then, which I'm not arguing is a bad thing. That's what they were given it for. I'm just saying if it's state land, it's not necessarily public land. And it was given in the Statehood Act for these purposes. However you want to use it, it's used to do these things: public schools, universities, reservoirs, hospitals, and so forth. So that's what they're selling and using those lands to maximize the profits of. Utah Statehood Act. Remember I said, people said, they told us at statehood we were going to get our lands back. Well, first of all, they first got in here when it was Mexico. Then in the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, it became United States territory. And the state of Utah was carved out of that territory, made a state in 1896. And the notion that they were assured at statehood that they would be given these lands after they were a state. The Statehood Act actually says these things: that the people inhabiting said proposed state do agree and declare that they forever disclaim all right and title to the unappropriated public lands lying within the boundary thereof. Not too unequivocal. It also says, the said state of Utah shall not be entitled to any further or other grant of land for any purpose than as expressly provided in this act. I don't see anything ambiguous about those statements. It's pretty clear that unless Congress changes their mind, that's what you get. Coast down to the finish line here and talk about something that is absolutely real. And I'm going to talk to you why. Because again, my only political position in this is I absolutely think it would be an irreversible tragedy if we lose these lands out of public ownership. And there are people who are working every single day, diligently, trying to figure out a way to get these lands out of federal common ownership. To give you an example, and I'm using Utah because that's where we are and that's where I live. But in 2012, they passed the Transfer of Public Lands Act, HB 148, which was signed by the governor. And what that said is you, by 2014, federal government, it's not binding on the federal government, but it certainly shows the intent of the people that push this forward. You will transfer all the BLM land, all the Forest Service non-wilderness land, all the Glen Canyon on the Utah side of the Colorado, all of the Grand Staircase Escalante, 31 million acres to the state of Utah by 2014. And it would become state-owned land, and the state could keep it or sell it. People say, well, we would keep it because we understand people like it. How realistic is that if it goes all of a sudden from 50 states paying to maintain these places to one state? What would those costs be? Using Utah as an example, and I'm using 2018 as the fiscal year, those costs have obviously gone up today. In 2018, the Bureau of Land Management in Utah spent for their operation and maintenance budget about $125.5 million. For the Forest Service, it was right at $70 million. For the National Park Service at Glen Canyon, right at $12 million. Now, the real ringer that's going to get nothing but worse, presumably as we go forward because of climate change, is fire. The fire season in 2018 on BLM cost right at $48 million. Forest Service fire cost in Utah was right at $36.5 million. Those are huge figures that are going to do nothing but increase. In addition, we talked previously about the fact that Utah received half the revenues that came in on public lands in Utah, so $74.5 million, and then they were paid in lieu of taxes, PILT, another $40 million. So if the state of Utah took this, they would have to come up with $406 million before they even started to make any money on these lands. That is a huge sum. In addition, in that same year, the state of Utah, on private lands and state land, just in fire costs, spent another $35 million, which would be really difficult, especially when you think that in the case of Utah, for example, the U.S. population of 335 million people as a tax base are paying for these lands, whether they're in Utah or Wyoming or wherever. If these go to the state of Utah, that tax base now goes from 335 million to 3.3 million people that are going to try to absorb these costs. That doesn't even make sense. They said, well, there's another section of the Statehood Act that says we're supposed to transfer it. That section says this, and I'm not a lawyer, you can read it yourself. 5% of the proceeds of the sales of public lands lying within said state, which shall be sold by the United States subsequent, after that land became a state, subsequent to the admission of said state into the Union, shall be paid to the state to be used as permanent fund, the interest of which only shall be expended for the support of the common schools within the state. The same wording is in Wyoming, Colorado, I think it's in Iowa that I've read, and probably many others. What it's saying is if we sell any more federal land in Utah, after the cost of sales, out of the net proceeds, will get 5%, federal government gets the other 95%, but the lands then are gone, never to be gotten back. And as Frederick Law Olmsted said, if that happens, this is what's going to happen. Those who are rich enough reserve for themselves the choicest natural scenes. Unless government acts, all places favorable in scenery to the recreation of the mind and body will be closed against the mass of the people. And what that then looks like is a sign like this, not one that says, y'all come on in, welcome. It'll be, it's now private and you're not invited to come in there. I sure don't want to see that. And I think, you know, I'm an old guy. I'm going to get to weather it out, but I see a lot of faces in this room that are good and young and have a lot more years to go enjoy these lands. You have got to stay vigilant. You've got to understand there are people that are not stupid, they're very smart, and they're looking for a way to get these lands out of public hands. And when they say no, there will be public hands, and they're going to the state lands. The state sells land to raise money. And there's no way they can foot that kind of bill. One fire season would wipe any western state out as far as trying to run these lands themselves.